Hello and welcome back to my channel. Today we're going to be reviewing the Canon 50mm 1.8 STM lens. This is a lens made by Canon, it's a prime lens and it's great all round, but today we're going to dive deeper in and see why and how it really should be something that's in your camera bag. I bought this lens with my own money and this video is not sponsored in any way, so it's a totally unbiased review. So without further ado, let's get on with the video. So first of all, let's talk about the autofocusing on this lens. Now, briefly, this lens has a very quick autofocus, but to go into more detail, the reason that this lens has a very quick autofocus is because of its low aperture. This low aperture of 1.8 allows more light to get into the camera and into the lens, meaning that the lens can focus much quicker, so it makes it good for quick burst things. I do some insect photography with this lens, obviously portraits as well. You want to capture every smiling moment you can, but it's a very quick autofocus on this lens. There is also manual focus on this lens, which is very easy to use due to the extremely smooth focus ring. This ring is the smoothest ring I've ever had. In all my camera gear, this ring is so smooth. Every time I turn it, I'm like, wow. You hardly touch it and it spins. It's wonderful. But it's also not too sensitive. You have to spin it quite a large amount to get it to actually focus, which is good, because if it was too sensitive and too easy to focus, then you'd end up accidentally turning it and everything going out of focus. But that doesn't happen, which is great. So as I mentioned, the aperture on this lens, the minimum aperture, is 1.8. You can go higher if you wish, but the lowest it can go is 1.8. This is really good to get a beautiful bokeh. That's the blurry background, as you can see in these images. And that beautiful rounded blurred background is made by the 7 rounded aperture blades inside this lens. That's an improvement from the previous 50mm lens, the 50 1.8-2 lens. That one had five aperture blades inside, which gave it a kind of pentagonal shape on if you were to do lights or a city and get the blurred background, you'd get pentagons, which is fine if you wish to, but this gives a nice round circle, which is often preferable. Also, when you're doing video, as I suspect many of you are, the bokeh in this is much smoother between transitions. If you transition from focus, then the blades inside are much smoother in this lens than in the previous lens. Obviously, this lens is a 50mm lens. It's a prime lens, which means there's no zooming on the lens. You cannot zoom this lens in or out. It will always be this size. It's that simple. The lens has a 49mm end element. This is a nice compact size. It's easy to buy filters for, so there's no issues there. I'll link a filter down below in the description if you want to pick one up. Also, this lens is in the description below if you wish to buy it. If you do, it really helps out the channel. They are affiliate links, but it doesn't affect your purchase in any way. It just helps the channel. This lens has a very nice lens mount. It's made of metal, which is an improvement from the previous one, which we talked about earlier, and which makes it much sturdier, and it will last a lot longer. This is great because if you're going to make an investment such as a lens, you want it to last as long as possible, and this lens will definitely last. And while we're talking about the old 50mm lens, when it comes to the focus ring, this one's also in a much better position. Now, many people have said that the other one being on the end was inconvenient and it was just unnatural, whereas this one being on the lens means if you're holding the lens, then it's right where your finger should be. So you can simply just turn it, and as I say, it is nice and smooth. So, this lens has a minimum focus distance of 35 centimeters. That is very good, in my opinion. The old one, again, used to be 45, so they've taken it down about 10 centimeters. It doesn't make that much of a difference if you're doing portraits or if you're doing landscapes, anything which you don't have to get that close to. But for me, as a mainly wildlife photographer, I use this lens for insects. I do a lot of insect photography with this lens. That extra 10 centimeters means I can get closer to them and get a much more detailed photo, which is where this lens is great. Going back to the focus ring, we're really focusing on the focus ring, but it is always smooth to turn. When the lens is off the camera, or it's on the camera but the camera's turned off, the focusing system will not work. Turning the ring will do nothing to the focus system, and this is beneficial because it means should it be in your camera bag off, not being used, and it gets knocked, nothing's going to happen, and the lens element won't come out the front and potentially get damaged. It just keeps it nice and compact, and that's because of the electrical transmission of the focus wheel. Furthermore, if you have the camera on and the lens attached to it, if it's on autofocus, turning the focus ring will not make any difference at all, which is really useful because if you're using autofocus and then you accidentally turn the wheel and it puts it out of focus, that can be annoying. I've experienced it with wildlife photography before, where you've focused on a subject and it's really precise focus, and then you accidentally knock the focus wheel and it all goes out of focus. Very frustrating, but won't happen with this lens. Manual focus, however, it will focus the lens and it's nice and smooth, but you have to turn it quite a lot to make it focus. Now, this can sometimes be inconvenient, but if you want the most precise focusing, it's best because it means you can really turn it and get that right amount of focus. Also, it means if you focus nice and precisely and you accidentally knock it a tiny bit, nothing's going to happen because it only registers a change in focus if you turn it enough. So that's another great feature. This lens retails for about £100 to £120. I bought mine for £120. Obviously, if you buy it second-hand, you can get it cheaper, and I 100% say go for second-hand lenses if you can. You might as well try because they are cheaper, and often on these websites you can return them if they're not what you think. So I know eBay, it's a great place to go. There's also places that refurbish lenses and cameras, so they're also good to check out. And the build of this lens is great. One, it looks really smart. It's a really smart looking lens. It's compact, but it's nice. It's all one kind of tube, if you know what I mean. It's straight edges and it's not like lumpy or bumpy or anything. It's nice and smooth, so that's really nice. It's also very small. Now, as a wildlife photographer, I shoot with my Sigma 150 to 600mm lens, and I'll just get it for you. It's a huge lens, and this is with the lens hood up, so it's an enormous lens. Here's the size comparison. And so having this tiny lens to go alongside it means that it takes no space. It's light, so it doesn't weigh down my camera bag, and it makes it much easier to transport my lenses. When I go out, I normally only take my Sigma 150 to 600, which the review is up in the corner now if you want to go check it out. And then I take that and my Canon 50mm lens, and because it's so tiny, it's really convenient and easy to carry. And image quality of this lens is outstanding. The sharpness of the images are crazy. I haven't experienced sharp images like this for quite a long time now. My Sigma 150 to 600 gets close, but I would say this lens has a better image quality and it's much smaller and cheaper. So image quality on this lens is amazing. It's a bargain for what you get. Here are a few images, and they're insects, and you can see the hairs on their legs. It's so sharp, it's almost unbelievable. So in conclusion, this lens has incredible image quality, autofocus, and compactness for the price that it comes at. The £120 will be a great investment for this lens. I say anyone who wants a smaller lens for portraits or something like that. I didn't buy it for my wildlife, but I've ended up using it for wildlife, so if you do want to do insects or pets, anything, it's a great lens that I think everybody should carry in their bag, and I'm telling you, it'll always be in my camera bag. So I hope you enjoyed this review and found it useful. If you did, please like and subscribe, and comment down below if you have any questions. Thank you so much for watching.